What's going on, everyone? I'm Dustin Stelzer with Electrician U. Today we've got a very special guest, Jordan Farley from Artisan Electrics.
Hello.
Welcome to the show, my friend.
So
Um,
nice to be joining you by the wonders of the internet.
yeah, it's so funny. Like this is how we have to interact with people. Used to be able to travel, but now everybody does it through a screen.
Yeah, it's
Um,
cheaper.
yeah. Well, so how is everything? First off, actually, just go into who you are and what you do for people on my channel that don't already know who you are.
So I'm like the British version of Dustin, except I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, but he's like what I aspire to be, right?
Oh,
So so basically I'm an electrician and I've got a YouTube channel. And yeah, I've been doing I set up the channel actually around the same time as you, Dustin, in 2016 when I set up my business, but I didn't really do much with it for a while. And then I just started posting a few videos and it started blowing up, probably like you found as well, and it became a thing, so I've gone from working basically by myself to having guys helping me out. Now I've got a few employees. Now I've got some admin stuff in the office, and I'm still a little bit on the tools, but I'm mostly kind of running the business and also doing loads of YouTube content, trying to post 3 videos a week, and
yeah.
trying to make them entertaining and educational, which, as you probably know, is really, really a lot of work.
It is.
But it's fun and I love it, and I love the electrical industry. So yeah, I'm so happy to meet you because I've been watching your videos since I think episode 3. I actually was the one that I first discovered you.
Really?
Yeah, you were talking about business related stuff, and what the magic of YouTube, it just threw at me. It's like YouTube's algorithm must have known that I was an electrician and I was starting an electrical business.
Yeah.
And I was at the same stage as you at the time, where you were kind of like figuring stuff out, like what advertising works, what doesn't. And you were just in that video, you were just sharing your kind of experience so far and hoping that it might help some other people.
Yeah.
And it actually did help me, even though we're we're on the other side of the world. I'm in England and you're in America. There was a lot of things that were kind of the same. So I found that video really interesting. And yeah, it's weird, like probably subconsciously that is part of why I ended up posting videos as well. So it's probably thanks to you that I have this channel, partly anyway.
That's awesome. I do remember, so like when I first started, I remember specific names of people that would comment because
Mm.
when I started out, like I didn't have very many people watching my stuff. So there was a few people that would just comment on a couple different videos. And I do remember always seeing your name. And then um, the more that you commented and we kind of exchanged little comments from time to time, then I saw you on Instagram and then I started watching some of your videos and I've just kind of hung on to that. So I've been watching your stuff too, and you've definitely been getting a lot better. There's a lot more going on. So I've been watching some of the, like you had a job that you did where you went out and did some like charging stations and there was 2 vehicles that pulled up and they both had your logo on them. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
bro, he's developing, he's growing. It's really cool. Cause like the first stuff that I watched of yours, it was just like it was really crude and it was just sitting at a desk talking about stuff. And I was like, I remember those days too. I remember when it was
Yeah.
like just the nuts and bolts, but it seems like you're really figuring it out, man. You're doing good.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as things progress, you start to realize the potential that something has. And I kind of realized that more I invest in the quality of the videos, the more, the viewers will enjoy the videos and the more it will grow. And it's kind of got to the point now where it's a business on its own. So like you're
Yeah.
probably finding, you can make a living off of it when it gets to a certain stage. So now I'm able to put a little bit more time and money into it to make the content better, which is nice. Because yeah, I mean, for the last couple of years, it's just been me with my phone, basically just filming what I'm doing, like
Yeah.
you in the car back in the day,
Yeah.
in your truck, you're like, hey, what's up, guys? I'm just here in the truck, just want to talk to you about what's going through my head.
Yeah.
But I love that because it was just like, it was so raw and honest, like the way you talked about stuff. It was just so kind of, you were just thinking out loud, about the whole process of this whole thing of running an electrical business and going on your own. And I really resonated with that because I was in a similar sort of stage.
Mhm.
So, and I guess a lot of people do.
Yeah, surprisingly, I still get a lot of emails from people that watch my Journey to Master channel and they're like, where are you today and what's going on? And you're like, where we want more of this content. And it's funny because I've been back doing Livewire again, and I've been filming a lot of the same kind of stuff. Like I got this like triple suction cup thing that I can stick on my window, and I can put like a full mirrorless, huge camera on, and or I can
Wow.
put anything small. My phone doesn't really matter, but I finally got this like thing rigged up in my van, so I can just set it over there and drive, and it's like it doesn't shake. Everything looks really good. So I've been recording some more content like that, and it's very much the same thing that it was before. It's more like how to treat customers and how to, like, when you answer the phone, don't be a douchebag, like really, be a kind person and be excited about talking to people. And so I've been starting to do a lot of that again, but I haven't really known what to do, like with the Journey to Master versus Electrician U, because this is kind of my mainstay. This is what the sponsorship started, and a lot of the response from the audience, just showing people how to do electrical work, that seemed to be the big gig. But
Yeah.
just having that other channel, I just don't know what to do with it anymore.
What I've actually done with mine is, because it's like you say, there's quite a niche of people who are interested in the business related content, and it's not necessarily, those videos are not necessarily going to get the views that doing electrical work videos get.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of value in them still. So I actually created an online electricians business course, where I basically just filmed, like, I just step by step how I set up my business. I just filmed it all and like explaining it to the camera. I literally just locked myself in my office for like 2 weeks, filmed this video course. It's 14 hours of content. And then I just put it out there for people to buy if they're interested. And that's had quite a lot of traction, actually. So that might be something that you could do from your sort of point of view that would probably help a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that. A lot of content creators kind of get threatened by other content creators because it's like, oh, well, they've already done something, so I don't want to do it because it's already been done. But it's like, no, the reason people watch content creators is because they like their perspective on things. So there
Yeah.
might be something that I do that talks about business, but it doesn't resonate with certain people. And when you speak about it, you just kind of cut through to these people in a different way. So it's really interesting. I might copy you.
Yeah,
And
man. It's the best form of flattery is imitation. They
yeah,
say.
yeah,
I'm definitely going to be copying some of your videos. So
yeah.
doing
What?
the British version, though,
Yeah.
obviously.
No, but that's really cool, man. What I've been wanting to do is I actually want to come out there and work with y'all. There's some people like in different
That'd be
countries
cool.
that are like, oh, we do things this way and do things this way. So I thought it would be really cool to do like a series where I go and travel around to just different parts of the world and kind of record how everybody does work, what kind of like codes and standards y'all have and licenses, and just do a series of different countries, because like you look at like Russia, everything they do is like block walls, and like they're constantly having to like chip out concrete and put boxes in concrete. Like it's a crazy thing because of how the construction is out there. And then like in Ireland, there's just a bunch of different ways of doing things. So maybe
Yeah,
someday I will be
totally.
able to come out and work with you.
That would be awesome. That'd be amazing. I've had the privilege of traveling a little bit and doing volunteer work in different countries, and as an electrician, and I absolutely loved it. Like, I've worked in South Africa, Croatia, the Netherlands,
Really?
and they all have different ways of doing things, and you learn,
Yeah.
and it helps you to think outside the box so that you can then apply that where you are, maybe still within the code, but a different way of doing things. It's quite cool.
Well, so if you're going to these other countries, you have your code from where you're from. Do you find a lot of these places have their own codes, or there's no codes and you're just trying to apply your knowledge?
Yeah, so like in the Netherlands, they've got their own code, but it's based on the British standard. That's one of the good things about being from the UK, is that we were one of the first countries, I think, to set up a standard for electrical wiring. So a lot of the other countries came later, and they kind of based theirs on ours. So there's a lot of commonality, but there's a lot of differences as well. So like, I mean, in the Netherlands, for example, they run what we call flexible conduit in the walls, and they put these like boxes in, and then they pull wires in, whereas we just put cables in the walls, which
Yeah.
I don't really like. I think it's much better to put conduit in, and then if anything goes wrong later, you can just pull in new wires. we're like really not future proofed when it comes to wiring up new houses and stuff. I think you guys probably have the same, right? You put a lot of conduit in.
Not in residences. There are some places in the US that their local municipalities require them to do conduit in everything.
Yeah.
But most of the country is not that way. We usually just have rolls of wire and we drill holes through walls and pull our wire in.
Okay. Yeah, that's similar to us then. Someone was messaging me on Instagram the other day and he was asking me some questions and he was like, do you guys use Romex or do you use cable? And I was like, let me check what is Romex.
That's all we use.
It seems to be similar to what we use, which is what we call flat twin and earth cable. So it's a flat cable, a little bit like, I think like Romex, and then it's got a live and neutral conductor or line and neutral conductor, and then it's got a CPC in it. But the CPC with ours is not it's not sheathed, it's not like insulated, so it's just bare.
Yeah, ours is as well.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. I'm glad it's not just the UK. But
I get so many comments from people like, why is there a bare conductor? Why wouldn't you put insulation on it? And I'm like, I think that's pretty standard.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I kind of get it because you have to put earth sleeving on every time, which seems like a waste of time. But
oh, see, we don't have to do that. You actually have to sleeve your bare conductors.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you guys just twist them together, don't you? Like,
yeah, just fold it out of the way. Like, we're cowboys.
Every time English electricians see wire nuts, they're like, no. It's like because we're like so not allowed to twist wires together because we do a lot of testing, which I think is different to you guys in that every installation we do, we have to test it all and we have to provide a certificate with test readings for all the circuits. And then every 5 or 10 years, that property needs to be inspected again, and you need to check the readings against the original readings of when it was installed.
Holy cow.
So if you have wires twisted together, you can imagine how difficult it is to untwist them and separate them to do the testing. Whereas if we just have them screwed into terminals, you can just unscrew them and it's a lot easier. So that's why.
What kind of things are you testing for that you would need to go and take every single joint or termination apart through an installation?
So it's not necessarily every single joint and termination, but for example, like every circuit, we have a series of tests that we have to do. So we have to do continuity of circuit protective conductors, in other words, earth continuity. So that could be either what we call an R1 and R2 test, where we measure the resistance of the R1, which is the line conductor, and then coming back on the R2, which is the earth, the CPC, what you call the ground, I think. So you're measuring to make sure that there is actually an earth at every point, basically. So if you've got metal light fittings, that they are actually earthed or grounded. And then like polarity tests to make sure that the line and neutral are not the wrong way around. And we have to do what's called earth loop impedance tests. So then you're basically measuring the whole resistance, the whole earth fault loop path from the transformer through the circuit and back. So you basically take the external earth loop impedance and then you add it to the R1 and R2 reading to get your what we call ZS, earth loop impedance. And then we have to do our RCD tests. So you guys call it, I think, ground GFCIs or something. Yeah. So we call them RCDs, residual current devices. And we have to do tests on those at 1 times the rated current, 5 times the rated current, half times the rated current to make sure that they actually trip when they're supposed to.
Interesting. What kind of test equipment do you have? Like, do you have a specific RCD tester that's all it's built for?
You cracked up a little bit there, but I think you're asking what tester I have.
No, so if you're doing an RCD test, do you guys have a specific piece of test equipment that all it does is test RCDs and it gives you the half value, 100% value?
You can get those, but most electricians use what's called a multifunction tester. So it does all the various tests and you've just got different settings so I use a Fluke, which I think you've got Fluke out in the US, right? And it's like a Fluke multifunction tester. So it does low resistance ohms readings. We do insulation resistance tests as well. I didn't mention that, but we basically put like voltage through the circuit and make sure that there's no low insulation readings. And then it will do the earth loop tests, the RCD tests. It does like a ramp test on the RCD as well. So if it's say like What's your standard? How many milliamps is your normal GFCI like rated at in your, for sockets, say, for example?
Shit, I don't remember. It's a really low number. I forget.
Is it like, because we have 30 milliamp RCDs here, so
Yeah, I think it's like 45 or 50, something like that. Very, very
okay.
low.
So what this ramp test does is it ramps up, and then when the RCD trips, it tells you at how many milliamps it actually tripped, and it shouldn't trip at less than half the rated value of the RCD. So
Okay.
yeah, it's a lot of testing involved in our installs, which is why being able to quickly disconnect like CPCs from sockets and like distribution boards, or breaker panels as you call them, is quite important for us to be able to do.
So even I guess are light fixtures and things like that designed in a way that there's screw-on terminations for everything? Because here everything has just leads and we put wire nuts on it all.
Okay. Yeah, no, here we have two types of connections in most electrical devices. We have either screw connections, like, just a screw terminal, or we have a push fit connection. So you like a little bit like, do you have Wagos or Vargos or Wagos, whatever you call them?
Yeah, Wagos.
Yeah, so like the push, the snap down ones, the terminals are a little bit like that in a lot of light fittings now. You just push the wire in and then it's connected, and then if you want to take it out, you just push it down, unplug. So it's super easy to take it out for testing later.
Yeah, I get a lot of people that comment. They're like, "What do you think about Wagos versus wire nuts?" And it's like most of us just use wire nuts here. The only time we ever really come across Wagos is up in fluorescent fixtures or something. Like a lot of the big department stores here have rows and rows of lighting, and so
Yeah.
each one of the ballasts will have Wagos or like a quick disconnect on the actual power leads. But that's really the only time that we use them, or if there's like a recessed can or something like that that has them pre-manufactured that come with it. So you guys use Wagos a lot. What do you think about them? Do you find any issues with like connectivity or like with moisture or heating or anything? You lose connection with them, or are they pretty successful?
They're brilliant. Yeah, I've never had any problems with them really. As long as you install them correctly the first time, then they're great. It's funny though, ironically, like what we do to enable testing does create more problems. So like, for example, the screw fit connections, as you know, a lot of like AC current creates vibration. So over time, screw fit connections loosen, and then you get loose connections. So we do find a lot of like old connector blocks, screw fit connector blocks that have come loose over time or not been properly installed. And then you get loose connections, you get arcing, things like that. Whereas a wire nut and twisting wires together, although it shocks a lot of electricians in the UK, I know that it's a brilliant electrical connection, like in terms of, very low resistance connection, very sound connection. So in a way, you probably get less problems long term by using those, I guess, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of arguments like in forums and social media on whether or not you should be pre-twisting like with a lineman's pliers, like actually really twisting and then putting a wire nut on versus just taking two wires and twisting. And it
Okay.
seems like we come across more problems with people not pre-twisting because once you pre-twist all of those, if you're outside and moisture and temperature fluctuations change, you might get those things kind of flexing over time, and then you might lose your connection. But usually inside of a house where everything's climate controlled and in switches and stuff, you're never going to have those things come off. It's a really, really solid way of doing it. But you're right, trying to take all the damn wire nuts off and dealing with all of that can be a pain.
Yeah, and we have it in the UK where like we've got some old school electricians where they used to actually twist the wires together. And so you come across that sometimes and it's really frustrating because you have to for example, with the ground wires, as you would call them, we have to take the sleeving off because they're supposed to be sleeved. Then we have to untwist them. Then we have to put new sleeving on the two separate conductors, test them and then reconnect them. So it's a lot of work to kind of sort it out and straightening up copper when it's been already twisted together you
Oh
know, it's
yeah.
quite
Yeah.
tricky to do it properly. So yeah.
So this sleeving that you're talking about, is it like a heat shrink that you have to put on, or is it just like a little cover that goes over the wire?
Just like a little cover. So we have different sizes, but it's usually like 2 mil or 3 mil sleeving. It's just very small, and it just slides over the bare copper conductor, and it just avoids kind of any potential problems, I guess, with bare copper being around in the back of an accessory.
So is it something that like you have a roll of this stuff and you just cut it to length? So do
Yeah,
you have to
exactly.
do
Yeah,
it on
yeah.
long lengths of conductors ever? Or
Um, the longest you do is probably at a breaker panel where you've got maybe like a meter of cable maximum that you've got to, do it for. But in general, it's just like in sockets and switches and things where, it's only about that much. So it's not really much of a problem.
okay.
But it does take a bit of extra time. I mean, if you're like bashing out loads of new houses and stuff, it would be, I would imagine quite a few hours would be saved over the whole lot of projects if you didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
So
So what about you mentioned that you use that kind of flat cable where you called it like a two pair with a ground, or what did you call it?
yeah, twin and earth it's
Twin
called.
and earth.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So is that something you only use for residences, or is that something you use everywhere? Because I thought you guys actually used cable assemblies where it was um, like a cable that had three insulated stranded conductors on the inside.
We use those for certain situations, but in most houses, in domestic installations, it's mostly twin and earth cable, and it's just buried directly in the walls, or it's run inside the plasterboard walls. What is it, sheetrock you call it?
Yeah.
So it's just run like we do the same as you. We drill through the wooden studs, run it in, put boxes into the sheetrock, and then connect the accessories. That's how most houses are made now. But in like commercial and industrial settings where there's chance of like impact damage and things like that to cables, or running cables externally, we have to install like special cables. So we have this stuff called steel wire armored cable, where it's like a black, quite a thick cable with a steel wire armoring on the outside. So you've got the three copper conductors inside, and then you've got a sort of a bedding of like insulation type material. Then you've got steel wire armoring, and then you've got an outside PVC sheath, so that if it gets knocked or hit or anything like that, it's resistant to impact. So if we're burying cables, or we're running them on the outside of a building, usually we run those kind of cables.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they are used a lot in commercial and industrial settings as well, because they're just more suitable for those kind of environments, really.
Okay. So you still have conduit installations that you do in like a commercial building where you have to run individual insulated conductors, right? Like you'll run two 220 circuits and a ground or two grounds or something, but you're pulling individual conductors through conduit, right?
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, personally, we didn't do a lot of commercial industrial work, but we do a little bit of it. And the interesting thing about Conduit, I'd like to ask you this. Are you allowed in the US to run like two different circuits in one conduit, or more than one circuit, say, in a conduit? Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because
We
we
have
are
entire. Oh, go ahead.
sorry, we are here in the UK as well, but in some parts of Europe, that's a no-no. They're not allowed, because you end up having like 400 volts between various conductors in one conduit, and that's like not allowed. So yeah, it's interesting.
Oh, see, running between two different voltage systems, we wouldn't do. You wouldn't have um, like a 480 volt system over here and then like a 240 volt system and somehow pipe them together so that you've got two different systems in the same conduit. But anything coming out of the same panel is always going to still just have that same potential. So we'll run.
Do you not use like three-phase panels though with single-phase circuits? So like for us, for example, we might have a three-phase panel with L1 sockets ground floor, L2 sockets first floor or something, but those two circuits might end up being run in the same conduit to a certain point.
Yeah.
So then you would actually have 400 volts potentially between L1 and L2 in that conduit, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
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 So anyway, it's just one of those things that people in Europe complain about.
Yeah, well, we even have in our code book, we have like entire conduit fill tables. So it lets you know essentially if you have all the conductors are the same size, that there's a certain amount of conductors that you're allowed to put in there, and it's like a 40% rule essentially. Like you don't want to be filling your conduit more than 40%, so you can still pull it out or pull more things in or whatever. But yeah, it's very common. Like they even show us in code how many you can put and how many you can't. And then there's calculations for if you have different size conductors. So if you have like a larger circuit, like a 60 amp circuit and a 20 amp circuit or something, it lets you know the value of each conductor and what its circular mills or what its diameter area is essentially. And you can calculate how many of those you're supposed to pull in. But I couldn't imagine trying to wire somewhere where you're only allowed to put one circuit per conduit.
Yeah, it can be quite complicated. You end up with a lot of conduits, put it that way.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. But I love working with like galvanized, like steel conduit. I love working with it. So sometimes we do it now in domestic properties just for people who like the look of it. They like the industrial look of those, you know, steel pipes surface mounted with like these old industrial style light fittings and things like that. It's kind of steampunk sort of vibe, you know. People love it at the moment. So we do a bit of that in residential properties.
Okay. In residential, interesting. Yeah, I don't here there's not really like a lot of people like steampunk light fixtures and things like that, but it seems like the style, at least in my area in Austin, is still very like Spanish tiles and stucco mixed with stone on the outside of the building. It's still kind of a very like traditional look, except for any like light fixtures or toilet fixtures or anything like that. That's kind of where they start to get fancy.
Yeah.
What's your favorite kind of work to do? Like if you could just only do one kind of work the rest of your life, what would it be?
Wow, that's a good question. I think at the moment I'm really enjoying doing the electric vehicle charging installations. We're doing a lot of that at the moment. I don't know how it is over there for you guys, but the uptake of electric vehicles here is really like ramping up fast. So everyone's buying Teslas around here. There's a lot of money around where I live as well, and London, and the government have put in like they will basically charge you for driving into London if you don't have an electric vehicle. So it kind of forces people to have electric vehicles. Yeah. So we're just doing loads of them. And because of YouTube as well, people see our installs on YouTube and they're like, I want you to fit my electric vehicle charging point. So some of our guys, you know, they end up traveling all over the country to fit charge points for our YouTube subscribers, which is
to fit fun. Them. I like that term, to fit them. What do you, there's just a lot of like, you say earthing, we say grounding. There's just a lot of
differences. There's so many things.
I know, I love it.
You say receptacles and we say sockets, right?
Yeah. So wait, for a plug, you call the female, you call, oh God, you call this a socket?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a socket. Yeah. Is that a receptacle for you or not?
We call, well, yeah, this is a receptacle. A lot of people call them plugs, but we speak very incorrectly.
The layman's term, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
The plug is the thing that goes in, though. This is the plug. This is the receptacle. But
yeah, we have cool plugs here. Actually, I don't know if you've seen a British plug. Let me see if I can show you one. Because they look. I'm just going to make sure that I don't unplug something important. These are our plugs, right?
Yeah.
So they're 3-pin. Now this has got a plastic pin because it's a class 2 appliance, so it doesn't need an earth. But yeah, they're quite solid. You know, they don't like wiggle out easily or pull out easily because if you put strain on it, it's not going to come out.
Okay.
Because like your ones are sort of on the back like that, aren't they? So if you put strain, they just come out really easily. Yeah.
We do have a lot of our appliances come with cords that are at a 90-degree angle like that, but usually
that's cool.
Yeah, like refrigerators and things, but it's really only because they want to move the refrigerator as close to the wall as possible. So having a plug sticking out like this, you know, you hit.
Yeah.
It's not for like great design and not being able to pull out. That's kind of funny. Yeah. But yeah, for a socket, we call sockets the thing that you put a light bulb in.
Okay.
That screw shell thing, that's what we call a socket.
We call it a lamp holder.
Yeah. All right. What do you call the different phases of construction? So like in if we're wiring a home,
Yeah.
we call that the rough in. We're roughing in the wires. And then usually we call the trim out the part at the end where you're actually starting to put the devices in.
Yeah, so we call it first fix and second fix.
All right.
So yeah, first fix is the rough in, second fix is the trim out, basically.
Okay. What do you call it when you're finished wiring and you start to actually make up all of the wires where you're going to put the devices in?
Okay, no, that is second fix. So yeah, that's what we call second fix. So first fix is like putting in all the cables, putting the boxes in and stuff, and then second fix we actually strip the wires and connect the sockets all in the same phase. So I guess our second fix is like your trim out and your what's the end bit where you put the socket faces on and stuff.
Well, no, so our trim out is like that's where we're actually putting there's so many people that call them different things. Some people say
Yeah.
trim out is when you actually put the plates on all of the devices because a lot of people they'll only put devices through the entire house. They don't put plates on and they wait until they've tested to make sure everything works and they start using the plates as their way of identifying what is good and what is working and they leave plates off of things that are not working. So
Okay.
some people call that trim out because you're literally just putting the trim on the devices.
Yeah.
I call trim out when the sheetrock and paint is done and I come in with boxes of plugs and switches and everything. That phase is what I call trim out. Just putting all the devices in, heating the building up, finishing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
in
I
when
think
we're
it's
doing our
that's
rough in phase, when we're actually wiring a place, so rough in is generally like we're just putting all of the wires in the building. But we say ripping out or make ready when we have all the wires run, but they're still hanging out of everything. And then we're actually stripping the sheathing off and we're putting wire nuts together and making all of the wires ready so that all we have to do is walk and put a device in. So there's that
okay.
phase called make ready, I guess, or rip out. And you do you guys
Yeah.
have something like
Yeah.
that?
No, it's just first fix and second fix, really. We keep it
All right.
simple.
I know. Us Americans, man, we make everything way more hard and confusing than need be. I had a buddy this morning that I was talking to actually. It's funny about like language structures and me speaking Spanish. Spanish is such a more like elegant language, I think, because all I've known is English, but it seems like they're able to communicate ideas in less words. And it seems like as Americans, we're very careless about the words that we use. So we just tend to like blurt a lot of words out and use a lot of nonsensical like we say I'm going to go to the gas station instead of like I'm going to the gas station. It's just like we randomly fill the air with sounds a lot. So it's just kind of funny that like how language changes depending on where you
Yeah,
are.
I totally understand. My wife's French, so I speak pretty fluent French as well. And we have the same thing sometimes between the two languages. It's really funny the different ways that we express ourselves.
Yeah. But I think far fewer words are more concise, and the more like more language evolves,
Definitely.
the more confusing it gets.
Yeah, but then the English language is interesting because we do have some words in the English language where one word can explain a whole sentence in a different language. For example, I don't know if you have this word in America, but we have this word called eloped. We say they eloped, and it means when two people run away together and get married.
Yeah.
And that's like one word to explain a whole scenario, which is quite cool. We have a few words like that, I think, and not a lot of languages have that.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I think I think in America we tend to have the opposite. We tend to come up with 17 words so that we can be so incredibly precise about what every single part of what we're talking about. You know, even in electrical code right now, we have
Yeah,
the word grounding and bonding. And
yeah,
we used to have this one term called a bonding jumper, and it was basically where we brought our neutral and our ground together and brought them to one point. And now there's like supply side bonding jumper, main bonding jumper, system bonding jumper, equipment bonding jumper. There's all these different terms, and it's like it's just a way for us to be way more specific about what exact part of the circuit that this we're talking about this one thing. You know, it's kind of
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, it's good in a way, but it does make things a bit more complicated as well, I guess.
Yeah. Who makes your codes and standards out there?
some weird like monkeys that sit in front of
I knew it.
Space monkeys with Elon Musk as the robot pulling.
He's at the head of everything, bro. I'm telling you, he's in all of it.
Yeah, no, there's a body called there's a body called the IET, the Institute of Engineering Technology, and they kind of like, it's basically kind of a body of people that are all engineers and stuff that all have an input on the regulations and standards that come out. So our regulations, like, they get updated quite often. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but for example, every probably 2 years we get an update, and then we have to do a new course to get up to date with the latest regulations. So we're on the 18th edition of the British Standards wiring regulations at the moment, which is called BS 7671. Every British standard has a number after it. So there are like British standards for a plug, for example, has a BS number. A fuse has a BS number and stuff like that. The whole British standards are for the electrical wiring installations are BS 7671, and they update every few years. So we've just had the first amendment to the 18th edition. We'll probably have a second amendment in the next year or so, and then after 2 amendments, usually they make a whole new edition. So it'll be the 19th edition next, and it's a bit of a money spinner, to be honest, because every time you've got thousands of electricians who have to do a day's course to get up to date with the latest regulations, and then something changes. So we've gone from being able to fit plastic breaker panels, as you call them, in homes. Now we're not allowed to fit plastic ones. They have to be made of non-combustible material. So we have to now put metal ones in. And whereas we used to fit like maybe one ground fault detection device for several circuits, now we just fit what are called RCBOs. So it's like a built-in circuit breaker and ground fault device in one. I don't know what you call those.
Is it you have one per circuit, or you have one?
Yeah. So in the past we would fit one for like several circuits, but now we just fit one per circuit. And soon, and you'll like this, soon we're going to have to start fitting AFDDs, which is something that you guys are used to, right? Arc fault detection device. Yeah. Like, this is new for us. I just fitted my first ones a few weeks ago and did a video about it, but they're so rare in the UK. Interesting. But now we're going to have to start fitting them because of electrical fires caused by arcs.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how our code structure works is every 3 years, we have a couple of different bodies that make code. There's not a federal standard, but there are private companies that create code, and then they lobby to the governments to get their code adopted. And so some places, some state governments, some municipalities just don't even bother. Some go with a different governing body. They're very similar kinds of codes, but this one main one, which is the NFPA, this is our book. So like every 3 years, this thing changes, it's updated. And we do the same thing every year. We have to go through a recertification kind of test, a continuing education course. But does
anyone, sorry, Karen.
Well, I was going to say with arc faults and ground faults and everything like that, that's one thing that has been steadily changing since probably, I don't know, 2011, 2008, kind of. It's just like they slowly have been introducing new areas where all of the ground fault protection has to be, and then where all of the arc fault protection has to be. And now in a residence, it's pretty much almost every circuit has to be arc fault protected. And we used to have these breakers that were called just a standard arc fault breaker. But now they have to be a combination arc fault. So they have to be smart enough to detect whether it's a series arc or whether it's a parallel arc between, a parallel circuit. But there's a thing called a dual function breaker now that does both ground fault and arc fault protection. And it was funny, I was on a podcast the other day and somebody was asking me where I think electrical technology is going to go. And I was like, I really think in America, at least, that we're going to get to a point that every single breaker installed in any situation is going to be a smart breaker that's smart enough to diagnose any possible thing that is going on in that circuit. And I even think that panels are going to start having smart technologies and have like essentially a brain that you can sense like diagnostics, and each one of these smart breakers can communicate with that brain. So we have a lot more information available to us for panels. At least I hope that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, I agree. Like a company reached out to me a few weeks ago, and they are making those smart breaker panels, and they were like, "Oh, we'd love to have a meeting with you and talk about our product." So I'm looking forward to finding out about it. But I know that it's something that is in development by a lot of companies. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's that whole thing, isn't there? I think you were talking about it the other day about Elon Musk and how he's scared of AI and stuff. I was watching something that you were talking about that. And a lot of people are like against this whole smart home stuff because it's like, what if they can just turn off my whole house? You know, what if somebody hacks the system and turns off every house? And it is a legitimate kind of fear, I guess, but it doesn't seem like we're going away from that. We're only going more and more into smart homes. I mean, we fit a lot of smart lighting now, and like video doorbells are a really big thing here. Yeah. Cloud connected CCTV, like the Google Nest cameras, and smart smoke alarms, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's all going that way, really.
Yeah, it's funny because like back in the 1980s here in the US, there was a big scare about Big Brother and about the government watching everybody and cameras everywhere. And that's stuff y'all are like way used to. And here we're still fighting. Like we don't want the man in our business watching everything that we do. So back in the 80s, it was like nobody wanted anything, and they were scared of wiretapping and their phones being listened to. And now it's like we're like, hey Alexa, hey wiretap, order me a pizza. You know, it's already here, and the they that might be able to control, like it's already such an advanced thing. Our technology is already there. So for people to be scared of it, it's like, bro, you're already so far behind if you're scared of that. Like these devices, this is who you are as a digital thing. So like this thing aside has every bit of information about me and my life, and it's all trackable, and every company that has an app is tracking every single thing about us. So it's so funny that people are like, well, I don't want to get a doorbell that can. It's like, bro, that's the least of your problems.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, but I think we're way past the point of no return now, really. You just got to kind of embrace it. But maybe the British people are a little bit more trusting than the Americans.
Well, yeah, y'all have been monitored.
We're like, oh yeah, that's fine. You can put a camera in my bedroom, no problem.
Yeah. Do you want one in my head too? What do you think about the whole Neuralink thing with Elon Musk's?
I think it's amazing, but it's also a bit scary. Like, I love the idea that it could, potentially cure a lot of like mental diseases and stuff, like brain diseases. But I just think it's kind of mad to think that you might one day have a chip implanted inside your brain. I don't really feel comfortable with that. It's but really sci-fi stuff, but you're right, it probably is going to happen.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about 50 years ago, nobody thought there was going to be this thing that I could like type with my fingers and talk to somebody in China, or I could ping a message up into space and back down. They probably would have like, don't do that, I'm not going to trust it. But it's funny, I go back and forth on this too with this whole Neuralink thing. It's like the reason we have a big bandwidth issue when we try to communicate or interface with each other with technology specifically. So like on a keyboard, I can type very, very fast. I can get my message or my communication across very effectively, very quickly. But since this device, we have more information accessible to us, but our bandwidth has slowed to 2 thumbs, So Neuralink, I think, would be a cool thing for at least opening up bandwidth. If you could communicate through an interface somehow just by thinking, that would speed our bandwidth of communication up so vastly. But it also opens up, like the atomic technology. It was like, well, if you're working on these alternative forms of energy, it's great. But then once somebody gets a hold of it and does something nefarious with it, everybody's going to sit and complain about it. But that's always going to happen, I think, when you have some new amazing technology.
Yeah, there's always going to be someone who's going to use it for the wrong means, unfortunately. That's just the way of the world. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you, like you say, it's heading that way. And what an amazing time that we live in, that stuff like that is even possible. I mean, this is a sort of like thing that's always been in the realms of science fiction movies, but Elon Musk is kind of making it like seem like it might happen within our lifetimes, which is crazy, you know, reusable rockets and going on the
Yeah.
moon and all that stuff. It gets you excited about like technology, you know. So I think it's cool. It's a cool time.
Yeah, I really like Elon Musk. I mean, I think he's a robot. I don't think he's a real human. This he's just a beast. But I love about him that he does the things he says he's going to do. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't look at things and try to find how they're impossible and back away from them. He's very much a, well, let's just there's a traffic problem in LA. You know, like 30 million people. Let's just dig tunnels. Let's just dig
Yeah.
tunnels underground and try to build a new thing. And LA is just like, well, you're Elon Musk, so sure, whatever you want to do, bro. But like he just does whatever he thinks, and it's like the things that he thinks about are such highly impactful things at our the level of society, of humanity. He's not tackling like, you know, like toothbrushes aren't designed in an ergonomic way. No, he's like how do we as a civilization figure out these big huge issues? So I love that dude.
Yeah, it's great. I think we need more people like that, really, who think outside the box and are willing to kind of like step out of their comfort zone and change things. I mean, even within our industry, I think we could do with some of that, because I don't know about you guys, but where we are, it's just so traditional. Like we're working with the same cables that we've been working with pretty much for the last 50 years.
Yeah.
And the installation methods are pretty same. Yeah, we have some new tools and stuff that make it a little bit quicker, but a lot of the stuff is very, very kind of old school, and nothing's really evolved that quickly in this industry. So it could do with a bit more innovation, really, in the electrical industry, I think.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that is driven by these big behemoth companies that have been doing business and have huge sway. They're hundreds of millions of dollars big. They've been making wire, and they're not going to let anybody else tell them to make any different kind of wire. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of, at least here in the US, the people that make our codes and standards are largely manufacturers. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a ploy. Like you see a lot of new codes and standards that require you to have to put certain materials in, and it's law. But it's the manufacturers that sit around these tables and sit and talk, and they do get to take public input from other electricians and stuff, but they're the ones ultimately deciding what. So we have the very similar thing. It's like we've been putting the same kind of wire in walls for 100 years. You know, like the wires in the last like 40 years really haven't changed at all. It's just a very similar kind of thing. We still use the same test methodologies, which are very old school. But in our industry here, the majority of people in our trades are older. So like the average age of an electrician, you know, probably 5 years ago was about 50, 51. It's kind of lowering the more that we're getting younger people interested. It's getting to be like 46, 45 maybe. But it's a lot of older thinking people. And a lot of these companies have been catering to these older, um, older methodologies as well. So we have something here in the States that we call a skills gap. It's like a shortage of young workers coming through. And I think the more young people that we can get excited about like putting things together and taking things apart and just get people into the trades, I think it's going to really help our infrastructure as a country. And if we don't, it's going to really severely hurt us. But do you guys have that same kind of thing where you have a shortage of
Yeah, we have exactly the same, unfortunately, where
really?
yeah, we've got a skills shortage, and there's a bit of an issue where there are quite a lot of people coming into the industry, but they're not necessarily receiving the amount of training that they should. So, for example, here you can do like a 6-week course and then become a qualified electrician on paper.
Wait. Like
uh,
an independently working out on your own electrician,
Pretty much, yeah. To be
or
what
like
we call
working
it, to be what we call a domestic installer, so to go into people's houses and fit stuff, like install wiring and fixtures in people's homes. You
6 weeks?
Yeah. And
Whoa.
it's crazy because you're getting these people who they get all excited because they want to do a career change and stuff. And they're like, I'm fed up of being stuck in an office. I'm going to become an electrician. I'm, 40 or something. And then they go out and they do a 6-week course, and then they have, they're labeled as an electrician, and they can go and advertise themselves as, your local electrician and install stuff in people's houses. And they have no experience.
They can own their own company as well. That's not just saying they're working for somebody. No way, bro.
They if they want to, they could just set up their own company. So now there are some people I know who've come into the industry through that route, and they are really good electricians. But what they've done is they've done the course, but they've also then said to a good electrician, can I work with you for a year? Can I get some experience with you? And then they go out on their own, and fair enough. For some people, that's the only way of getting into the industry, because they're too old to do an apprenticeship. They don't have the money to put themselves through the whole 3-year course. Because for me, I was an apprentice, right? I did an apprenticeship with my dad, who was an electrician. I was fortunate in that way. It took me 4 years actually to become a qualified electrician, to get all the experience and do the exams and stuff like that. And you're doing 1 day a week at college, and then you're working the rest of the week. So you're actually getting a hands-on experience. But some people, they can't do that route, so they have to go in a different way. But unfortunately, it's sort of too easy sometimes for people to do the course, think they know what they're doing, and they know just enough to be dangerous, as we say, And we come across some terrible installations that are done by not necessarily those 6-week people. I mean, we come across installations that have just been done by what I think is just laborers and stuff, and who are maybe overseen by an electrician. I don't know if you have that where you are
Yeah, a lot.
So so a new builds, for example, is classic here. We have new build houses going up so fast because they're trying to build more houses in the UK. And these guys, they go in and they fit out a house in a day, and it's rubbish, trash, as you would say, the installation quality, but they get away with it. I mean, do you have that?
Yeah. So here, where I am at in Austin, Texas, specifically, within the city of Austin, it's not possible for that to happen because the inspecting procedures are so, overbearing, really. But it's good because it means that all the installs are quality installs. Pretty much everybody fails inspections in Austin for something, because all of the inspectors have their different little quirks and things, and you got to learn each inspector. A lot of times they'll fail for things that aren't even code, but it's just a preference of theirs. But it's very, very you can't do stuff like that and get away with it in Austin. But a lot of the suburbs and other areas like that are booming and that are growing, they'll subcontract out, and they'll just hire some cheap laborers that and they just give them I want you to wire this from here to here, run a wire, but normally these companies are bigger. So they'll have 50 to 100 people working for them, and they'll have maybe 5 of those people that are electricians. And those 5 people are charged with going around to each one of the communities and checking on the work and making a little punch list of all the things that were messed up. And then they've got a little bit more experienced guys that are not quite laborers, but they're not quite superintendent kind of level people. And they usually go back out and make all of the fixes. So there is some of that kind of ramshackle, cram it together, do it fast stuff but it's generally, I think the problem that we have is that we have a lot of people that have been in this for a really long time that don't care very much. More than we have a lot of people that don't know anything. We kind of have both, but it seems like there's just kind of a cream of people that are really passionate about this, that rise to the top. And then there's the body of everybody else that's just trying to get a paycheck. Does it seem like that out there too?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the things I love about doing YouTube, really, is that you get the people who really care, who want to improve. They want to improve themselves, and they want to become a better electrician, even if they are qualified maybe, or they want to see how other people do stuff. And they want to learn more, and they watch the videos. And then you kind of get this community of actually people who are good or love what they do, or both. And that's really nice. But like you say, when you go out there into the real world, maybe 80% of electricians, they just really don't care, and they just want to get the job done and go home.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a challenge really, but in a way it has its advantages because it sets us apart from the competition. So
Yeah.
we get, you know, we can charge a premium for what we do because we are ahead of the competition, even though it shouldn't really be like that. All electricians should do a standard like we do, but unfortunately they don't. And so, you know, people choose us because they're confident that we will do a good job. And I guess it's probably the same for you.
Yeah, my customers can definitely tell there's a difference with me, but also just because I'm emphatic and I'm like smiling and like I joke around with
Yeah.
their kids and ask about their family and I keep track of, like I just care. So there's a little bit difference in just my persona, but that thing also kind of translates into my desire to be good at what I do and to know what I'm doing and everything like that. But there are a lot of people out there. I'm not trying to like shit on my industry or
No, no.
anything like that. There are a lot of people that are very good and care a lot and kind of have that heart of a teacher. Um, but even in me doing what I do, there's still a lot I don't know. And
Mm.
it's funny because a lot of people come to me like I'm this expert in the industry. No, I'm just a guy that like is just like any other electrician. I just happen to hit record and talk about stuff. And so the cool thing is I have a huge audience that reflects back to me answers for things. So when I don't know something, people will correct me and I'm like, "Oh, like in real time I'm learning by producing content." So it's just been a great thing to be a content creator. I'm sure you can say the same.
Exactly the same. Yeah, like I've learned more from people's comments on my YouTube videos
Yeah.
than probably, you know, in like the last 2 years of doing YouTube than I have in my whole career, probably because, you know, people are constantly feeding back to you and like, you know, like, why do you do it this way? Why didn't you do it that way? And I'm like, hey, I never would have
Oh
thought to do it
shit,
that
you're
way. But
right.
that's like, oh man, let me go back and do it again.
Yeah. No, I'm the
But
same way.
you do, and you have such a great community of like experienced electricians who watch the videos as well often. And then you've got like learners who ask questions that make you think about things. So it's really cool. Yeah, it's a great thing that we have this opportunity now to be able to share our work
Yeah.
and, you know, to instead of like in the old times, you would probably do your training with one electrician and he would teach you everything he knows, but everything that one person knows is not as much as everything that 1,000 people know, right? So now you can watch lots of electricians work and they can watch you and then they can feed back, and it's like this amazing kind of shared knowledge that comes with the internet, which is awesome.
Yeah, I agree. Well, dude, it
Can
was
I
great
ask,
to Oh, go ahead.
oh, just one thing about the code thing, like the building inspections thing, because that's really interesting to me. So the inspectors, they come and actually check your electrical work. Are they from like the government or something?
Yeah, so most local governments, like my city, will have a board of inspectors, and so
Yeah.
several like one's inspector has like one portion of the city, and another one, there's but these people will come to every job. So when I pull a permit, the city knows, okay, this job's being done by a licensed electrician. So we have to request an inspection when we're done with our rough-in or our phase one. They inspect the wiring inside the walls and they give everybody the thumbs up to put sheetrock up on the walls. And then once we come and put our devices in and get everything heated up, we call for a second inspection for our final inspection. And they come out and give us the thumbs up or thumbs down. But yeah, it's usually a governing body. If we're in an area like way out in the country or something where there is no, authority really, there are third party inspectors, which is just a company of people that will sit and like read through the code and they'll call themselves an inspector and they'll come out and do some kind of inspection. It's usually very wrong and very
Yeah.
like they don't know what they're doing, but they're, at least there's some kind of eyes looking at it. Do you
Yeah,
guys
that's
not have the
really
same
good
thing?
though. No, so we have this self-certification kind of thing where you go online and you fill out this form which takes 5 minutes to say that you've complied with the building regulations, and then you send that to the customer at the end of the job.
Okay, that's so
So,
funny because like y'all are
yeah.
ahead of us in a lot of ways, but it
Um,
seems like we're ahead of you in other ways too. Like it's really interesting. Your testing and diagnostics and certification for the work that you do and all of that, I think we could use a whole lot of that. But the rigor in which we put people through experience to have to be able to get a license, I think is something that I would try to probably choose to keep. But the whole 6
Yeah.
weeks to get your license thing, that's bananas, man.
I mean, we do have these approved bodies that you have to kind of become part of to be able to do that self-certification.
Oh, okay.
So like for me, I've got my inspection next week from this approved body called the NICEIC, and they check me every year. They go through all my papers to make sure I've got all the necessary insurance and stuff. And then I have to take them round like 3 jobs and show them some of the jobs that I've done so that they can check the quality of the work. So that is needed in order to be able to self-certify, but it's still, you know, it's once a year and you could kind of just choose the best jobs to show.
Yeah.
So it's
you could do a lot of damage between those 3 houses, or like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think there's room for improvement. We could learn we could learn a lot from you guys, I think.
Yeah, I think both ways, man. There's always room for improvement. And that's one thing I've noticed in this trade, is that everybody thinks they know the way. Everybody thinks that, you know, electricians in general just think that they're smarter than everybody else and that we know more than the next guy. And I think everybody kind of going about things as if they are a student rather than that they are a master would be such a more beneficial way for us as an industry to learn more, to innovate better, to come up with better codes and standards. I mean, it would just be a better way to seek, you know, knowledge and you constantly learning new things. Like even as if I'm doing this for 30 years, I'm still going to look to people that have been doing it longer. I'm going to still look and listen to people that have been doing it for less and listen to everybody's opinions and ideals instead of putting myself as the center of all things. I think just like taking that ego off a little bit and like letting input in, I think is just such a better way to be.
Yeah, totally. It's very important.
Well, dude, it was really good to talk to you. I could talk to you for like 6 more hours, but I can't right now. But we should definitely do this again. There's tons of questions that I have. Maybe next time I'll go look at some videos of some electrical installations or materials or whatever, and I can have some things to ask you specifically about like, what is this and why do you do this? And then have you do the same thing about like stuff here in America. Yeah,
that'd be really cool. I'd love to do that. It's been great to just have a chat to you. Really, really enjoyable. And thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Shout out all of your socials and where can people find you?
Yeah, so search on YouTube, Artisan Electrics, like this. That's the logo. On Instagram, at Artisan Electrics, Twitter, at Art Electrics, I think, Facebook page, Artisan Electrics. Yeah, just follow it. Mainly on Instagram. I post on Instagram a lot, and I post obviously on YouTube 3 videos a week. So head over and subscribe to the channel. That would be great.
Do you do like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing?
Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, 8 p.m. in UK time. So that is morning for you, I guess. Yeah. It's probably like lunch. It's 5 p.m. here now, and it's probably 11 a.m. there where you are, right?
Yeah, it's 11:17.
Okay, so 8 p.m. is like 1 or 2, so 5, 6, 7, 2 p.m. Your time.
All
so
right.
yeah.
Cool, man. Well, have a good day. Stay safe out there. Keep doing great work, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Best music and video.